He was a Gilgal, he said, of, he said, he was a Gilgal of Shimon, I think. The Yitzchak Moshe said he was a Gilgal of who? He said he was a Gilgal of... somebody that, he remembers him being he's by Bar Sinai. Yirmiyahu, no, you're shy? No, there is something, he's right. They threw him into the bar or something. It's nice. He's a Gilgal of someone. Okay, everybody say. Rabbi Bergman, where's the Rabbi Moshe? Where's the Rabbi Moshe? Where's Rabbi Bergman? Where's the Rabbi Moshe? We need the Rabbi Moshe. So let's get there. So let's make a quick sikum here. Let's make a sikum. So there's Hatmana B'Dover She'eina Moisef Hevel, and then there's Hatmana B'Dover Ha Moisef Hevel. Those are the two Hatmanas. Thank you so much. There's Hatmana B'Dover She'moisef Hevel, and Hatmana B'Dover She'eina Moisef Hevel. Hatmana B'Dover She'eina Moisef Hevel means that if you're wrapping something just to retain the heat, so then that is Asur on Shabbos. It's not Asur on Erev Shabbos. Hatmana B'Dover Ha Moisef Hevel is Asur even on Shabbos. It's also even on, also on even Erev Shabbos, because there you're increasing the heat. The Gzeiros are different Gzeiros. The Gzeir Vatmana B'Davra Ein Moisef Hevel is he's going to come to the pot. He's going to see that the food is taka. It's cold. He's going to have cold food. Gewalt. So what's he going to do? He's going to go and put it on a fire. He's going to go and put it on a fire. He's going to put it on his neighbor's Shabbos. Rabbi Singer. What's he going to do? He's going to go and put it on his fire. He has to have hot food. That's Asur on Shabbos, and therefore we say you're not going to gain anything. So you don't come with your towels and your blankets. We're not going to let you wrap up the food. So then stay away. Once he has to stay away, there's no point in looking in the pot to see if it's hot or cold. It doesn't make a difference. But on Erev Shabbos, he could wrap up his chicken soup with very nice. Why not? Right? The only reason we would have to worry is he's going to come to go and put it on the fire. Erev Shabbos, let him put it on the fire. Ben Hashmashis, we're also not worried, says the Mishnah Berurah. Why? Because Ben Hashmashis, most pots are already anyways bubbling, they're already hot, they're boiling. So if it happens that he has to do Atmani, even for not Tzairich, as long as he wasn't the Kabbalah's Sibur, so we're going to go and let him wrap it up in a blanket on Ben Hashmashis. Okay, that's Atmana B'Davar She'eina Moisef. Derech Agav, yesterday, Rabbi Lieberman asked me a question. I think he's right. I said yesterday he's wrong, and I think he's right. He asked me a question. I said yesterday that when you take silver foil, we'll explain why in a moment, but when you take silver foil, and you wrap up a challah, let's say, and you put it on top of a hot plate, not on a hot plate, on top of the cholent pot or something. So we said, that's our example of Hatmana B'Davar HaMoisef Hevel. Lulei my svar, but let's say easier, slowly. Hatmana B'Davar HaMoisef Hevel means that you take something which is either increases the heat, like the Gemara's example, salts and all types of weird things, right? Or remets, things that we don't usually deal with, coals. That's also even on Erev Shabbos, because he's wrapping it up in coals and salt and whatnot. He shows he's in the mood of hot food, and we have to be scared of this guy. He's going to take the food. This Rabbi Singer is going to take the food out of the salt. Hey, food, you have to have food. He has to be Adik in Shmir Shabbos, right? He's going to take the food out of the salt, put it into, you hear with this Maisa? He's got right now, he has this cholent pot on a hot plate, and he puts on top of it a blanket, okay? A Machal Shabbos blanket. And it's wrapped the whole entire food. All the food is wrapped, and it's Mamish Chil Shabbos. Chil Shabbos. And now what's going to happen? This guy, he's very adik. He's very adik because he shows his wrap. And we explained yesterday, that's called Hatmana B'Davar HaMoisef Hevel. Because Kivyachol, the blanket traps the fire, and Kivyachol, that becomes the remits, and the whole thing is now covered with Hatmana B'Davar HaMoisef Hevel. Listen to the lumdus. What can he do? He's going to start stoking the hot plate over here. What's he going to do? The hot plate has one dial. You hear this, Maisa? I was thinking, he's going to go to his neighbor. Tell me if this sounds familiar. He's going to knock on the door of his neighbor. He's going to say, listen, you don't know me. I'm crazy when it comes to having hot food. Do you have a hot plate? The fellow's going to say, yeah. He's going to say, does it have dials? He's going to say, no, it doesn't have dials. Okay, get away from me. He's going to go to the next neighbor. Do you have dials? There's this big guy here answers the door. Yeah, talk about my hot plate. It has the dials on it. And it's got, and he's Gavaldik. And he's going to take his cholent, put it on that hot plate, wrap it up and stoke. He's going to start going up and down, right? Because that's what Chazal said. That's what Chazal said. Hatmana b'davar moisiv hevel shows that he's in the matziv. He's in the process. He must have hot food, and he's going to go and take it out of the salt and put it into hatmana b'davar moisiv hevel, and then he's going to start to stoke. Okay, that's it. And if he doesn't, he's not bikoros. He's chiluk and Chazal. Chazal said he would. Okay, that's the chayr. Okay, that's hatmana b'davar ha-moisiv hevel. So derech agav yesterday. And that's also even Erev Shabbos. So of course, that's going to be also even on Ben Ishmashas. And that if you did it, Rabbi said, you have to take it off. I didn't understand Rabbi Yasha. I was in Zeichel to understand Rabbi Yasha. You have to take it off. You have to take if you did this and you wrapped it in a towel. So you have to take it off. Now it happens to be that the Mishabur brings down on this specific case in Tzivkat and Mem Gimel. That if you have a hot plate and you have a towel and you're covering something with gamre, that we consider to be atmana b'davar ha-moisef hevel. And that is also, you're not allowed to do it. But the Mishabur brings down that if you see someone doing it, you don't have to be moiche. You don't have to put up signs against this fellow in Meir Shodim. Why don't you have to put up signs against this character? Because the Mishabur brings down, it's a big machlokes rishonim how to learn that actual case in the Gemara. The Gemara brings a case that there was a kli that was inside a kupa, inside some type of a towel, whatever, inside some type of a wrapping. And then they took that kli and they put it on top of a davar moisif hevel. And that the Gemara says is aser. The shayla is what's the pshat? I told you one pshat just now, which is that if you have this wrapping of a davar she'ein moisif hevel, and you have the heat source underneath, then the heat source kivyachol creates a matziv where it's considered as if the entire wrapping is a davar ha-moisif hevel. That's the pshat that we just learned. But there's other Rishonim, some machlekes. There's others that learn not like that. They learn that's not the pshat. The pshat is that wouldn't bother us. The underneath is fine. The top is davar is ein moisif hevel. Everything's fine. You put the two together, it doesn't make a difference. The problem is when you take the davar in a kupa and you put it on top of something like gefes, because now we're afraid this fellow is wrapping and this fellow is on top of a heat source. So this guy is showing us he's meshiga. He's going to come to take it and dip it inside of that gefes, and then it'll be wrapped. It's like a gzeira. You're going to come to go and do hatmana b'davar ha-moisef hevel. And if that's the case, says Tosfos, Mishabur brings it, that's only if you could wrap it inside. But you can't wrap inside a hot plate. So therefore, if you take a towel and you drape it over the hot plates, now it's a machlokes rishonim. Is this considered hatmana b'davar ha-moisef hevel? Could you do this on Shabbos? Of course not, because it's at least hatmana ein moisef hevel. The only question is it hatmana b'davar ha-moisef hevel? So if you see someone doing this, let's say the shviger, let's say, you come to somebody's house and there they have the towel draped over the hot plate. So Mishabur says, ein limchos. If there's somebody that would like to know what's the right thing to do in life, so then you should tell them, you should know Mishabur is not happy with this. This is not the proper anhaga. Even Rav Moshe, the Dibros Moshe says that the Maker Adin, maybe but we try to be machmir. We certainly are machmir. Now we don't take a towel, drape it. I'm talking where it's totally covered. We'll talk about when things are open soon. But right now, where it's totally covered and you're on top of a hot source, that's also even on Erev Shabbos. That kind we spoke about yesterday. And then at the end, I explained with Rav Moshe. I explained that Rav Moshe Feinstein Zeichet Tzadik Levracha says a most wonderful svara. A wonderful svara. He said that which the Shulchan Aruch, we have another yesod, that when I'm wrapping something not for the purpose of keeping the heat and being shomer the chayim, I'm wrapping it to keep out the rodents. I'm wrapping it to keep out snow. I'm wrapping it to keep out dandruff. I'm wrapping it to keep out flies and all types of things. I'm wrapping it so that the children shouldn't burn their heads. I'm wrapping it for other reasons. So that's not for tachlis of shmiras hachayim, and that is not an isser of atmana b'chlal. That's not called atmana. That's not called atmana. If you're matmin for some other purpose, that is not included in the gzeres atmana. We saw yesterday there's a machlokes. Is this even by a davar ha-moisef hevel? Is it even by a davar ha-moisef hevel? And l'maisa, I told you, we'll prove it today a bit more. The consensus of the poskim is that yes, it's even by a davar that is moisef hevel. Even by a davar that's moisef hevel, you have this heter, and the objective of Chazal was to keep the person, to show that he's not interested in keeping it hot. If this fellow is just wrapping it to keep out rodents, so then we don't have to be afraid that he's going to go and start stoking the fire. That's what we explained yesterday. So tachlis, we have a new heter here in Sif Beis. Hatmana in a davar, even that's moisef hevel, if he's not doing for the purpose of hatmana purposes, of shomer chayim purposes, so then it doesn't go into gzeres hatmana. So yesterday we ended with Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe told us a svara. Rav Moshe told us that if you have something that's a pot lid, that was the example of Moshe. He said a pot lid is always oimid and miyuchad for everything. So therefore, I don't care what your kavanah is. When you're oimid or miyuchad for everything, so then the shame of this, it's mufka from gzeira satmana. Maybe Chazal thought to not ask such a thing because it doesn't have a tsura satmana, since that item is something which is always miyuchad to keep out rodents and to make sure it doesn't spill and whatever. No, so that doesn't get the shame hatmana. That doesn't get a shame hatmana. So Moshe said, the Mishnah Berurah says not like this. So he explained, Moshe explains the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is talking about you take a pillow and you put it as a lid on the pot. You take a pillow and you put it on the lid on the pot. Okay, so now says the Mishnah Berurah, now it's totally in your kavanah, because that pillow is not miyuchad to be a lid. It's a pillow. So now if you're putting it on to keep in the chayim, no, so that's a matmin agent. That's a matmin agent. That's a matmin. Derech agav, Rabbi Bergman, does that stem with Rabbi Falk? Rabbi Falk told us every food is entitled to one covering, a pot and a lid and a this. Right? Doesn't stem, right? Because over here, every food, so the pillow is going to be considered the lid. And every food, Hatmana only starts, as Rav Falk Machtelio in the first volume, in the 32nd Tshuva, the Isra of Hatmana only starts on, we have not a food, on a pot. Hatmana is on a pot. But the Aleph base is every food is entitled to a pot. So therefore, maybe Taka, if I have here a pot and I want to put a pillow on it, so according to Rav Falk, every food is entitled to one pot. And if that becomes, so maybe Rav Falk will agree here if it's something so mufka from being a lid. It's like, it's a weird thing. It's a pillow, that's so mufka. So then we're not going to say it. You have to be miyashi if Rav Falk knew that. But I'll go upon him. So that says Rav Moshe, what's pshat in the Mishnah Berurah, if you have a lid, so then a lid is an inherent chefza of a non-matmin agent. A lid is something which is oibid for all types of usages, to keep out rodents, to make sure it doesn't spill, etc., etc. But mashenkin, if you have a pillow, so now it says the Mishnah Berurah, it depends on your kavanah. If your kavanah is both, problem. If your kavanah is only chayim, for sure, problem. If your kavanah is to keep out rodents with a pillow, mutter, not kan. So we explained yesterday that silver foil in the year 2020, understand now? The silver foil in the year 2020 is oimid for everything in the world. It's the most oimid. What's it normally oimid for, if you want my opinion? So what do you have to do? You have to read the box, right? You have to read the box of the silver foil. Did any of you read the box last night on the silver foil? I read the box. Oh, thank you, Nussi. Sansei for English. Thank you. Says Nussi Samuels, he weiß the Chais, he abgelenkt dem Box, he learned to get them box, and then box steht, all-purpose silver foil. All-purpose, I think we have the same one. All-purpose silver foil. So you look on the backs and they give examples of what to do with silver foil for very intelligent people. So in the back they have there wraps food, and you can freeze food, wraps food, and you could go and store food, right? Wrap the food, and all types of wrappings. I imagine they don't have this idea because they're goyim. But I imagine you could also wrap the food and, shomer the chayim of it when you put it on top of a crock pot of your cholin that goyim don't have and would die if they ate, right? So whatever. But you get the point that most purposes of silver foil are not for the purpose of keeping the heat, okay? Most of the purposes of silver foil is for keeping it all together, basically. That's what I seem to have seen. And most of the purposes of silver, so therefore we stole from Rav Moshe Feinstein, we stole from Rav Moshe that svara, that if I'll have something who's oimid for every purpose, all purpose, so then I don't look at silver foil as a matmin agent bichlal. When I see silver foil as a wrapping of a food. Not of a matmin of a food. I see it as a kli. I see it as a pot. I think everybody who looks at silver foil, a normal person looks at silver foil, he sees what? He sees a pot. You're doing it not for that reason. That's like the fellow that takes his food and puts it into the pot. Just a moment. It's like the fellow that takes his food, puts it in the pot for the purpose of keeping the food hot. It's ludicrous. That's not what you're doing. You're putting it in there, and it's a kli. And this is probably the idea. Every food is entitled to a kli. Just give me one moment. It's aibazai. Therefore, it comes out that you're allowed to wrap a challah and put it on top of a hot plate. Why? Because what do you want to tell me? This is hatmana b'davar ha'maisif hevel? That's not Atmana B'Davar Ma'aseh Hevel. Why? Because the thing is oimid as what? The thing is oimid as a kli, and therefore L'chayra will say it like this: we don't look at it as a matmin agent bichlal. Okay, is that crystal clear? Before I got right, that's what we said yesterday. Rabbi Lieberman, in just a moment, asked me a question yesterday in the Shiur. He asked me that this is all if you're doing it on Erev Shabbos, But if you're going to do this on Shabbos, which is a very common case, right? Now, I'm not talking about someone that takes a potato kugel, which is already wrapped, and just takes it and puts it on top of the, crock pot. Because there, why is he putting it in the wrapped silver foil? Because it's there. He's not doing it to make it hot or whatever. He's there because that is its kli, right? I'm not talking about that case. That's wrapped already. He's just doing it to put it up there because he doesn't want to get it dirty because it holds it together, whatever. But let's say he takes a challah out of a bag, right, which he puts it straight onto the chalent, and let's say he doesn't care about flakes. He's not thinking about that at all. And now he wraps it with the kavana to make heat. Now, if he would do that on Erev Shabbos, I just told you I don't care. And that's mutter. Why? Why is that mutter? Because like we said, l'chayra, on Erev Shabbos, it's mutter. What's the problem here? The problem is that he's doing hatmana. So what's that hatmana? L'chayra, it's oimid not to be considered as a matmin agent. It's oimid to be considered a pot, and it doesn't matter what your kavana is. We see this not as a pot, we see it as a general pot. But he asked me what would he be if he did this on Shabbos? What would he do on Shabbos? So I said yesterday, it's mutter. Because the same svara applies. Now, I want to explain the oimik of his question, though. It's the same exact svara. It's not matmin. It's just taking a kli and putting it on top of an urn. The only thing is, it's not so simple. Rabbi himself didn't saymich on this svara levad. It's interesting. Rabbi himself he was talking about the case of the thermos. And he's saying, could you put the lid of the thermos on? So Rabbi said nearly that the lid should be mutter because the lid is aimed for everything else in the world. But he didn't saymich on that svara alone. Ramosha said that because thermos in the first place is machlekes rishayim, so therefore you could be mekel. Okay. Now I suggest, So Ramosha wasn't saymach on this svar alone. So then I say now it's not to push it. Yesterday, why was I willing to be mekel? Let's see. The reason I was willing to be mekel was because we said a svara that it's considered also maybe not called atmana b'davar ma'aseh hevel. Because I explained that there's shitas that hold, it's not atmana b'davar ma'aseh hevel because we're on top of a hot plate. And there's a lot of shitas that hold, it's not called atmana b'davar ma'aseh hevel because they don't go with that svara, that the wrapping chaps the heat and turns it into a matmin, a davar ma'aseh hevel. And they say the only time it's called a davar matmin, but davar ma'aseh hevel is when you could put it inside of the actual coals. Okay? So therefore, it's not a hatmana b'davar ma'aseh hevel. Okay? But it's still what? It's atmana b'davar she'ein ma'aseh hevel. If you don't go with Ramoshe's svara, then what is it? If you don't go with this new svara for Moshe, that something that's miyuchad is not considered atmana b'chlal, so then we explained that there's a svara to say it's mutter because you can't wrap it in the hot plate, and there's Rav Moshe's svara. So together, I was willing to be mekel. Okay, but where would I be willing to be mekel? On Erev Shabbos. I'd only be willing to be mekel on Erev Shabbos because on Erev Shabbos it's mutter to be matmin b'davar ha'ein ma'aseh hevel. But on Erev Shabbos, it's not mutter to be matmin b'davar ha-ma'aseh hevel. Okay, so we said this isn't called the davar ma'aseh hevel. But one moment. But on Shabbos, if you want to wrap it, so then now I'm in big trouble because it's still at least atmana b'davar ha'ein ma'aseh hevel, and on Shabbos it's also to be the elamai. We have Rav Moshe's svara, but Rav Moshe himself wasn't willing to be saymach on his svara. So if you chap the cheshbon, in other words, I said yesterday. This cheshbon to explain Rav Moshe, that Rav Moshe would consider silver foil to be today considered not kavanas atmana. Rav Moshe himself doesn't say that svara is so muchlat. He said, I'll be willing to be saymich on that svara b'tzirif. Over there, the tzirif was a thermos. The thermos has its own svaras, like we explained. And I was willing to use that svara on a hot plate because a hot plate is something that might not be called atmana b'davar ma'aseh hevel in the first place. Okay, but therefore, so if you did this on Erev Shabbos, so then it's Shalom Yisrael. Because what is it at worst? Hatmana be'ein ma'aseh hevel? No, hatmana be'ein ma'aseh hevel on Erev Shabbos is mutter. Okay, but Mashen came to do this on Shabbos, so now we're running the risk that it's Takar hatmana. We don't have Rav Moshe svara, so it's at least hatmana b'davar ha'ein ma'aseh hevel. So therefore, yesh ladin if you could be made collected. I got to think Rav Moshe svara is gevaldik. But Rav Moshe didn't think his svara was so gevaldik enough to be saymach. So that's the oimik of Rabbi Lieberman's question, and it's Tucker. Sorry, the tzad that the wrapping is. Why is it ein ma'aseh hevel? Oh, so that explained. Is it sad in the Rishonim that maybe it's only called the Moshe Hevel if you could put it into the actual underneath? But here you can't put it into the. It's a machlokes if this is called the Moshe Hevel. Sorry, that itself is a machlokes. Towel is aser. We don't do it, but the Mishabur brings down it's a machlokes. So I was saying that when it comes to silver foil, I have one svara that it's not called Moshe Hevel because you can't dip it inside. I have another svara that it's einay miskav. It's not called the Ma'aseh Atmana because it's oimid for kol davar. Okay, that's for Moshe wasn't saying. To put them both together, you could be mekel, but that I can only be mekel on Erev Shabbos. But to be mekel on Shabbos, I can't be mekel. It's a cheshbon. It's a I have to Yishayla. The Amkes to Yishayla. I was driving home yesterday. Oh, now the Ma'aseh, two things. Number one is I don't agree with Rav Moshe's apprehension. I think Rav Moshe as far as a Gavaldik Gesvar. I don't understand what's the, I don't know. Rav Moshe as far as Mamish Gavaldik Gesvar. Right? You have to know sometimes the derech of Tshuva Svarim is that when they write something, they write one Svar, and it is a good enough Svar. Rav Moshe in this Tshuva here, it does sound like it's a tzirif. I'm not sure exactly what to do with Rav Moshe, but it's such a Gavaldik Gesvar, Rav Moshe is saying, right? Now, you mitzaref that, we'll see. Today we're going to have some problems with that other Mahalach of Rav Falk. We'll see, there is a Chazon Ish that sounds like this, that every kli is entitled to one wrapping. You know, every kli is entitled to one wrapping, and therefore it won't be called Atmana B'chlal, right? But, okay, let's put it like this. If somebody does it for the purpose of, wrapping the challah, just for the simple purpose of chayim, here, most people, it's not the case. Most people, I don't think, are doing it for chayim anyways. I think most people are doing it for moisture, that it shouldn't dry out. Most people are doing it because they don't want to become fleishiks. Most people are doing it because they don't want it to breckle all over the place. Most people are not doing it that it should get hot all over. What? Because they don't want the moisture, they don't want it to dry out. What? You can't take a bag and put it on top of a crock pot. Sorry? I mean, at Maisa, he knows a lot about food because he's Aaron HaKoyen's Einiklach that were makriv korbanos and lechem upon him, etc. And these guys had it easy. They put lechem upon him on the base. Mamish, it came out, it was fresh. They put it on to next week, hot, fresh, right? So he's somebody who's used to having hot bread and not having to do anything. Right? So he comes along and he says, so why doesn't he just take the bread, put it on top of the hot plate? And Elamai, no, because after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, he was very nervous about his hot bread. So he wraps it in silver foil and whatnot. I don't know if that's the reason why the Roiv Am does it. No, Shwalbi say the Emes. Why do you do it? I don't do it. I don't know. No. How do I know what? Do you want me to start asking every single person? Well, no. Okay. Who puts it on with the silver foil to just make sure that the moisture, that it doesn't dry out and whatever, it doesn't dry out? It shouldn't make a mess. Sesame seeds all over the place. What? Kind of. How many people think? Let's say you don't think. Let's say you don't think. You just push it rapid. You don't even think. Is that a problem? By the man, they asked the Chavetz Chaim, what happens by the man if you didn't think? So the Chavetz Chaim gesagt, if you didn't think, it doesn't have a tam. It's kind of not true. If you didn't think, it probably tasted like man. Man has a taste. It's a pichas dvash, right? Unless there you have to think, I want it to taste like man. I don't know. But I don't know. What? Not thinking is always a problem. Yeah, that's true. Fiskus, not thinking is always a problem. What should I tell you? So tachlis garet. If you're doing it because you want the heat, I do see it sad to be machmir. On the way I said it, yeah, no, both. We saw yesterday for both is a problem. I'm not sure. But if you're doing it for the purpose of heat, if that's one of your intentions is you want to keep in the heat, so then I could hear it. That's a problem if you're doing it on Shabbos. I'm not sure. It could be even if it was the Mishmur's mashma that once you have both reasons, dual kavanah is also a problem. That's number one. Now, number two, is that crystal clear? By say it's a little bit of a pilpul, but it's that's number two. Come again? Is it from a crack pot in Erev Shabbos? For sure it's mutter. From Erev Shabbos, for sure it's mutter. You can put it inside the challah. No, what? It's an interesting shayla he's asking. I don't know. Why is it not like Gefes? I hear you saying. We're going to see in a minute. You're causing trouble. You're causing trouble because we're getting, what's it called? He's causing trouble. Okay, give me a minute. That's a very good shayla. That's a very good shayla. Why not? We're about to see a major shayla about Kishka and the Chalon, which all the Achainim talked about. I said, no, wait, divide, everybody say, Sei still. Anarchy, all the countries in the world, everyone's revolting. I will not have it here. Okay? Watch it, okay? But Al Kapanim, stop it right away. Otherwise, I'll tell you what matters. Al Kapanim, Tachlis Karet. I'm going to come back. You see what you started? Right? See, you got to be nervous. I'm going to talk about this, but give me a minute because it gets involved in the Kishka Shaila, the challenge of the Kishka. What are you causing trouble for, right? You want to know who's causing trouble? Right? Bergman is also causing trouble. Everybody is causing trouble today. Listen to this. He says to me, what are you talking about silver foil and Rav Moshe? You know that Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva about silver foil. You know that? I mean, come on, everybody said, if I made up a whole tshuva for Rav Moshe and I didn't bring the Rav Moshe himself as an entire tshuva about silver foil, then I should be, what's the word, disbarred? Right? What? Arrested. Arrested. Welcome to Venezuela. Okay, here we go. Yeah, what? It's not here. What you're trying to trick me. Where is it? No, but this isn't Chelik Dalet. It's not an Erech Chaim Dalet. You gave me Chelik Beis. You're causing trouble. Anarchy. Right? Total anarchy. It's very difficult with you guys. Who let the English in here, no? Who let them in? Are you from Romania? Let's see, I'm right. All right. Listen to this. Rav Moshe, and you guys know I love these tshuvas, these Dayan Al-Dalet tshuvas. Like there's the third tshuva in the Dayan Al-Dalet tshuvas, right? So they asked Rav Moshe this shayla. Are you allowed to take a potato kugel, wrap it in aluminum pail? I think it means foil. Are you allowed to take a challah or a potato kugel, wrap it in silver foil, and put it on top of the hot plate? That's our shayla. Listen to what Moshe says. Moshe wrote this in 1975. In 1975. So Moshe writes, Davar tzainin mutter lahamin bein shelo yacham bein shelo yitztanin yoser v'afilu shetafik zinasa ma'at nami mutter but b'moisiv hevel is aser. So Moshe says like this: if you want to take a potato kugel and just wrap it in a piece of silver foil because you want to retain its coldness, I don't know why in the world you would do it, but you want to do it something to do with temperature, that's okay. It's mutter lahatminis atzayin that we learned yesterday. It's permitted to be matmin something cold. Even a cliche we spoke about yesterday. But says Rav Moshe, he says, but b'moisiv hevel is aser. Reish nun zayin siv vav. It means siv zayin. It's a mistake in the tzus. But in a moisiv hevel is aser, right? And a hefsek kedera is also called the moisiv hevel. And therefore, it's aser to wrap silver foil, and that is atmana. So what are we sitting here talking the whole entire time for? It does mefurish in the guy in Rav Moshe. So first of all, you see from this Rav Moshe something. What do you see from Rav Moshe? You see from Rabbi, what? Why dual? I mean, you don't see that here. Absolutely right, but why do you see that here? What? No, I don't see it here. Right? But first of all, you see that Rabbi does not go with a klal that every food is entitled to one kli. That you see, right? That's okay. We have to deal with that. That's Rabbi doesn't go with that. Okay. But another thing you see in this Rabbi, interesting. In addition to what I just said, right? Rabbi said, remember yesterday I told you there's a shayla. If I have a different kavana, remember we said yesterday, if I have a different kavana, does that work on a moisiv hevel? And I told you this raya is that we take on, let's say I want to wrap something in a towel on top of my a crock. I have a cholent pot. Here, I have like this. I have a cholent pot in a crock pot. Okay, in a crock pot. It's mamish surrounded on all sides. And now I want to put a towel on top. Why do I want to put a towel on top? Because of the kids. Because the kids, I'm afraid they're going to touch the thing. I want to put a towel on top or whatever, right? And I'm afraid of the kids. It's going to burn the house down. Okay, but I put it on top to block. That's mamish Because now it's wrapped on all sides. We're going to see there's a whole shadow about a crackpot, but that's only because the crackpot is open. Here it's wrapped on all sides. It says right? So then the chayra, that should be totally. Do you have a header when you're doing it for a different kavanah? So I suggested it's a machlekes in the Torah Shabbos. The Korban Nesanos Einikel said that you don't have a heter. Okay, and I told you this raya is that you do. This Rav Moshe is a raya that it's mutter because Rav Moshe says explicitly over here. Rav Moshe says, you know why silver foil is usher to wrap a challah and put it on top? He says because your kavanah. It's mamish what he writes. He writes since it b'maisav vevel usher. He says ulekorchan b'ni aluminum is nami atmana. Nami atmana. Over here he's talking about this specific case. No, it's not a raya. No. I take it back. 1 second. No, I take it back. No, I take it back. There's no raya from Moshe. I take it back. No raya from Moshe. Moshe should be talking about that he's stam wrapping. He doesn't say why he's wrapping it. There's no raya from Moshe. I take it back. But this raya of Moshe is not like we said. It's not a raya. It's mefurish and Moshe, not like we said. Moshe seems to say that silver foil is mefurish. That silver foil is not mutter. I suppose. Yeah, we don't have a right to any of our shalas. But one thing you see that silver foil is not mutter to wrap up a challah and then to put it on top of a crackpot. That's what Moshe says over here. And he doesn't differentiate Shabbos and Erev Shabbos and whatever. He doesn't. He says it's usher. What? No, so you just have to know if in 1975, you just have to know what was the normal usage of silver foil. Okay? You just have to know what was the normal usage of silver foil. I stand strong to what I said. I know that there's no Rav Moshe about. I just imagine that Rav Moshe, the time of Rav Moshe, if you look in Shimon Eider when he brings this shaila, actually not here, I didn't write down the Marmakim, I'm sorry. But when you look at Shimon Eider, when he brings down the Marmakim, it's mashma that he learns like this, that silver foil was something that was miyuched for the purpose of keeping food warm. I can't take a chayes, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. But Akapanim, I can't take a chayes for this statement. But that's my feeling. My feeling is that today silver foil is used for all things. The truth is, I have to be right, otherwise Moshe would be a steer. Unless he said Moshe wasn't willing to be seimich on that sir, at all, he wasn't being something doesn't sound right. Plus, I gave a gavaldik tzirif because since it's something that goes into the chalent, unless you have Rabbi Adler's question. Rabbi Adler says that no, it can go into the chalent itself. It's interesting. Interesting. Excuse me. The chalent itself is myself, yeah. Let's see. That's the big shaila anyways. I'm saying you're going on his question. Okay, let's see. That's the big shaila of all the paiskim. They all discussed the shaila of the kishka inside the chalent. That's the $1 million shaila. Okay, but it's that answers. Rabbi Adler asked me, Rabbi Bergman asked me, the L'chayra, Rav Moshe is not like this. Okay, I'm not convinced. Okay, so now we'll start the shiur. Is that clear? Now, yesterday I ended the shiur with an interesting maisa. Now I'll add 2 more maisim. These maisim I found in the Me'orah Shabbos. Has become slowly my favorite sefer now. In the 397th page, over there, he brings 2 more stories. One story was that they asked Shlomo Zalman, I put on Erev Shabbos a towel on top of the cholent, on top of the crackpot. I put a towel on top of the crackpot. On top of the hot plate. You have like the chicken soup and the cholent or whatever, and you draped on top of it a towel. And you draped it in a way of where you shouldn't be doing katmana. And you made sure that you didn't cover the sides. And then, lo and behold, I look on Shabbos and a little birdie came and knocked down the sides. And now it's on all sides. It's on all sides. So do I have to uncover it? Is that called, you just asked before, who said, Rabbi Singer once said, what if I wasn't thinking bichlal? So here is the best case where I wasn't thinking. I put the towel on, not for the purpose of wrapping, and then it wrapped b'meila. In other words, they asked Shlomo Zalman, is there any reason why you should have to you should have to take off the towel? So it's gavaldik shayla, right? It should be pashut mutter, right? It should be pashut mutter, right? You didn't have das to do a ma'asat mana, and we see everything here goes past his kavana. He has no interest in the heat. He might be happy now about the heat, but he had no interest in doing that on the sides. He never did it. It happened on its own. Basically, what would happen if Shemayim came to a monkey and the monkey went and wrapped on the side the towel and everything? Would I have to take it off? So Shlomo Zalman answered like this. He answered, you have to take it off al Tamaris Ayin. So on the bottom, Rabbi Adler, the author of the Sefer, he writes over there that you see Rav Shlomo Zalman held it was mutter, right? He held it was mutter, which he's right. You see bets and that if I'm not doing it with the kavanah of wrapping and it happened on its own, then it's not usher because the whole idea is when he does. And then he says, but Elmayr, if someone says the Marasayan, I gotta, and Mamish don't understand Rishon Zaman. I don't understand Rishon Zaman. Everybody says if there's a Marasayan on that, then every single case in the world there should be a Marasayan. Every case that we matter, let's say I put the towel on because of the rodents. I put that sweater on the urn because of the children. Right. So then why isn't there a Marasayan? It's Mam Shapella. I called Rabbi Adler today to ask him. He told me Tzarchin. I told him that I'm here in Mei Sharm in his, his village. If you have an answer, you have until 6 o'clock to bring me the answer. It's Tzarchin. I don't know. Sorry. What are you gonna do about the doggy sweater, the urn sweater? So if you put it on to block it from the kids, it's mutter. I'm saying unbelievable chiddush. You just said a murder chiddush. I'm saying it comes out if I buy an urn sweater and I'm buying it because I want to save the children's finger lock. So then that's going to be, if I buy the one that's a miyuchadik urn sweater, you can tell me it's also because some people use it as a heating sweater. I don't know. I think it's big. Yeah. No, but you don't see anyone that says it. That's what troubles me also. Well, I don't know. But then he has another story there. He has a story that they wrap the pots. Why they wrap the pots? Because they have these old pots. And they don't want anybody to see they have these old pots. They have like these old pots that they were Yerush from the Haim, they brought from Czechoslovakia, and they don't want anyone to see that they have these old pots. So they wrap the old pots. And then, afterward, the people left, right? So now the husband says, let's leave it on. It's keeping the food nice and hot. So that's the same shot we spoke about yesterday. Does it work that since it was Shas Maisa, when I put it on, I didn't have attention to be a matman? Chutz from this new Rav Shlomo Zalman Marasayim, which is interesting. But when I did it B'Shas Maisa, I didn't have intention. So now in the middle, when I have intention, is that considered a Maisa Tzman? It's interesting to Shaila. I didn't see any, as far as that are machras klape the Shaila. So I'll leave it for the other to think about. Come again? I hear it's not it should be also, but I've even been saying that the it's everything when it comes to Moisif Hevel is totally in his perspective, in his ashkafa. Here's a guy, he's wrapping it. He's nervous about it. But maybe you could say no. Maybe it's only if he did a Maisa originally to show he was nervous about it. That's a shayla. I don't have a raya to this shayla. If anybody has a raya, you should tell me. I saw Rabbi Yadler. He doesn't really he didn't have anything machras either. He himself says, I don't have anything machras. Come again? Two kavanas. I mean, what happens in the beginning, and then the rodents all run away? It doesn't sound like. No, dual kavanah is asur anyways. What do you mean? Anyways, asur dual kavanah. Yeah. Rabbi Singer is saying no one ever warned that. By the way, now that you put it on because of the rodents, don't be happy. The truth is, I could even myself a little bit to what you're asking. Maybe it's what you mean. In every case, if the guy would think for a second, there would be a nechusa possibly, right? So then that itself is a shtickle raya. It's something to think about. I don't know. I don't know. Now, there's one more thing I want to mention here by side. I saw in the Shevet Levi in the 5th volume in the Marasayin is always a concern. No, but by Spira, we don't make up Marasayins. I don't know. And obviously you see over here that there's no Marasayin. I don't know. I mean, you see over here from the whole Sigurd, there's no Marasayin. I don't know. Something does bother me here. But I saw in the Shevet Levi in the 5th volume, in the 30th Tshuva, that Shevet Levi talks about the doggy sweater on the urn. And I just want to give you the Marmakim because this time I have to do Tshuva. I did not understand what the Shevet Levi was saying. And he writes over there that the sweater on the urn is mutter, even if you're doing it for the purpose of heat. How can it be mutter? How can it be mutter? Vosner was a grace of koyach. How can it be mutter? He writes that it's mutter. I was kind of looking for my shiloh when you put it on and change your mind, right? And then I found this, and he says it's mutter. He says, you know why it's mutter? He says, look, what's the reason why you put this this doggy sweater on? All right, it's going to anyways get there. It's anyways going to get hot. So he says, you put on the urn sweater. Does anybody know before I say? Because I want to see if the Olam clapped it. Why do you put on the urn sweater? What? Doesn't save electricity. It probably doesn't save electricity anyways, does it? Interesting. Maybe it saves electricity. Okay, that's the reason why for the dot of mamish like old people. Yeah. No. So if it's going to be to speed it up, it's checkmate, right? Because that's mamish makbid al chayim. That's what I always thought anyways. I think if you ask most human beings why they're putting on the urn sweater, it's either to block the finger loch or they want it to get as hot as possible because it only gets to 180. They want it to get to 212. I think that's what you ask most people. But anybody want to say? What? No, but the Matthias, it doesn't. It goes up to like 212. It boils and then it stays at like 190. So I always thought they wanted hotter, like that, something like that. What? Sorry? Rabbi Sher, answer the question. Why do you put on the urn sweater? You don't know. You don't have an urn sweater. Okay, so why? No? So Rabbi Tersh was makavin, at least in the Metzias, to the Shevet HaLevi. It got to make sense what he's saying. I don't think people think this, and this is very important. Rabbi Tersh says, you know why he puts on the urn sweater? He puts on the urn sweater because when the urn has a sweater, so what happens is there's a hot coil, right? It's not, the hot fire or whatever, and then it goes off. So now it's going to retain the heat for longer. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't have the sweater, then it cools down. So it's shomer the chayim. So he writes like this. He writes, so then why do I have the urn sweater? Klape, when the fire goes on, the fire is going to, I guess he means once it goes up to 190, it turns off anyways, or something like that, right? So he means like this. He means it's just going to, I'll say it like this. You have to know if the Metzias you're saying is right, Rabbi Tarsh, but this is what he says. He says that, let's say the Metzias is that my hot water gets to 190 and then it goes down to like 170. Let's say once it's going to hit to 170 or something like that, so then it goes back on again or something, right? So, but there's going to be a long time where I'm not going to have my water. Let's say even 160. It'll be a little bit more extreme, So until it gets, that means it's going to be 30 degrees where I'm not going to have heiss of Wasser, which takes like 20 minutes, and I'm going to have 20 minutes constantly of where I don't have heiss. So he says, so what you do is you put on the urn sweater, and then it keeps it at 190 for longer. So why am I putting on the urn sweater? To be shomer the chayim. So he says, so then you're not doing it to be moisef hevel. And if I understood correctly, this is what he's saying. You're not putting on the urn sweater to be moisef hevel. You're putting on the urn sweater to what? To be shomer the chayim. That's what he says. He says, inevitably, once it gets to 190, it'll even be hotter. I don't know, he seems to learn that it'll be, who cares? But that's not your kavanah. And then it turns into like Eina Miskavin. That's what he says. He said, I'm very misupik about this in Ganzen Svar, this whole Svar over here. In other words, what? In other words, what he's saying is that you're doing this Maisa on Erev Shabbos. You're not doing it on, if you do it on Shabbos, that's Mana B'davar Ein Maisa Fevel is also Aser, right? But who cares? You're doing it on Erev Shabbos. So Klape Erev Shabbos, it's out Mana B'kesher to be Shomer the Chayim, to retaining the heat. What? Basically, when the urn's off, I'm putting on a sweater of the urn so that when the urn is off, it should retain the heat. And then when the urn is going to have the coil, so it doesn't need the sweater. That's what he writes. First of all, it could be he's 100% right in the Metzias. What's the halacha of people, nobody in the world knows this. And most people, when they put on the urn sweater, they're just doing it because they think it makes it hotter or something. they're doing it so then who cares what they think? Who cares that they're wrong? Right? By Atman, it's all totally in the Metzias of what he thinks, right? Because I saw one sefer that argues on him. I think it was the Emek Tshuva, right? The Sadmar Dayan, and I think he argues on him, and he writes that that's not what people are thinking, and he says that he's wrong. Right? I think Rav Fazal is for sure right. I think the Metzias of what's going on is right. He's arguing, they're saying that's not the Metzias. I can imagine the Metzias he's saying he's probably right. But the question is, who cares? If I didn't know that until today, I empowered all of you, Rabbi Isai. Now you know that. Now you know that when you put on your urn sweater, Rabbi Tersh, right? So now you're going to be thinking about making sure you retain the heat for longer. I don't know. Is he right? Or is it still a problem maybe? What? That for sure retains the heat, but then you don't have the fire coming on. Rabbi said, can I ask you a question on Rav Vazner? I think that's what you're asking, Rabbi Sam, but can I ask you a question on Rav Vazner? Lemaisa is when I have the urn sweater on, okay, and it's going to now, how do I explain this? It's going to for sure make it that, how's this? it's going to, from when it's at 160, it's going to get to 190 faster because of the earn sweater. Do I have any chus in that also? I just want chaim. My brain is thinking chaim. I want chaim, right? So I want that too, right? If the guy is mamish like Rav Osner, he's mamish going, and Erev Shabbos he puts on the earn sweater, and like he's being malbish, the kohen gadol, the shmeina begadim, and he puts it on. He thinks to himself, "I'm putting this on to retain the heat, b'shat that the fire is." I think he's thinking, "I just want this here, so it should be hot." That's how I would, if I had to argue on Rav Osner, that's how I would argue on Rav Osner. If you guys from this point on think that, but anyways, you have Marasayan, Rabbi shares Marasayan over here, without that. Was? Come again? What, the doggy sweater? The earn sweater. It's just there. Why is it there? Good there, Fragnish, right? That's worse. That's worse. You want it to be hot. You're putting it on. I'm nervous. I think the earn sweater is a little bit scary. And I would try to get different attire for my earn. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm nervous about it. I'm nervous. Okay. Excuse me, what? If you put the earn sweater half on, right? It's a special nitznias too. But put on the earn sweater and as I'm off. So then there's what to talk about. We have to get to what's called atmana bebixis. Don't cause trouble, right? Rabbi already caused trouble. We didn't do, But okay. Excuse Emwa. Now, there's a few things here, Rabbi Isai, in the beginning in Sif Aleph. I'll tell you bekitzer, because when we get to the practical, I want you to know this. When we get to crackpots, what do we have? We have 3 working days after this. No, I could do it. Yeah, we could do it. But what really, we could do it, or really? What? So, is Rabbi Isai, so Tachlis, let me tell you a few ideas over here. Over here, the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning, in Reish and Zayin Sif Aleph, brings down all types of knossos. It brings down all types of knossos. What's going on here? All the guys on the TV are sleeping over here. What's going on? They turned off their screen. I know what's going on here. They're all there. You know exactly what happened over here. Everybody here is sleeping. Don't think I don't know what's going on here. Right? It's a good thing I have live people over here. Oh, now they're all showing me. Yeah, as if, right? Put your clothing on. You're naked. What are you doing? Okay, Akapanim, let me tell you something interesting. How some guys still didn't get their. You see guys going like this. You should see what's going on over here. Akapanim is Rabbi side. Tachlis, there's a bunch of knas psakim over here that the Ramah brings down in Tiva. There's a lot of kulas b'di'evin in Atmana. A lot of kulas b'di'evin in Atmana. Certainly for an Ashkenazi, and some of the Sfardim are probably make b'di'evin on our Ashkenazi kulas. Anyways. To make a long story short, to aser atmana, again, you have to be a goyin. To aser b'di'evid atmana, you have to be a goyin. That's what comes out when the dust settles. When you put together Sif Aleph and Sif Zayin in the Shulchan Aruch over here, to aser atmana, you have to be a goyin. First of all, in Shabru and Sif Gotten Ches over here says that if you did atmana, and all you did atmana was make the food oimid b'chamimusay, you just retained heat. So then, for sure, is no knas, right? Because there's nothing to aser. When you're retaining something, there's no chef to aser. Skrata the Shartziim says it's mashma that it's only when I'm retaining heat in a davar ha ein a moisef hevel. So Shartziim says, what's the difference? Even if you retained heat in a davar ha moisef hevel, who cares? If all you did was retain heat, so then there's nothing to knas, and the Shartziim says sarchin. Or some has a very long tshuva about this, but we'll see in a minute. In practical halacha, it's not going to make so much of enough community anyways. We'll see. But to retain heat is one case that we don't aser. Another case we don't aser is kidra chaisa. Why won't we ask a kidra chaisa? Because I'm going to tell you a big chiddush now. You ready for this? There are certain rishonim that compare the terim of shehiyah and atmana. Okay? We halacha don't allow this. We don't allow this. We don't allow garafikotim. We don't allow these things. We don't allow this. But when you want to know, are we going to ask hatmana b'di'eved? So whatever heter, listen closely, Kindle. Whatever heter that we had in shehiyah, at least klape the food. Maybe not klape the heat source, but at least klape the food. Whatever heter we had in shehiyah, so there are shitas rishonim that say whatever heter you had in shehiyah, you have in atmana. So if you listen to what I just said, it's impossible to ask atmana kimat. Why? Because if it's kitcha chaisa, you put up a raw cholent in an oifen of atmana, whatever, right? It has to be b'davar moisef level because it can't just be retaining heat, right? So if you put up a cholent with kitcha chaisa, so shehiyah, there's a heter. If you put up a cholent for tomorrow, so we know on the books there's a heter also. So if you did atmana for tomorrow, you're not allowed to do these things. But if you did atmana, so then since there's a heter by Shiur, there's a heter by atmana. Michael ben Drusai, is there a heter by Shiur? Says the Be'er Lacha, says, yeah. So b'diavad, you can't do these things, right? But b'diavad, so you have to keep in mind, if it's mistamik v'yafalai, for sure there's a heter. Again, you can't do this. We know that atmana is usher even by mistamik v'rala. You're not allowed to do it. But you want to know, are we going to make a knas with the Eved? It's kemat, we're never going to make a knas. So what's the only case? You have to be an incredible goyin to get a Isser atmana that we ask with the Eved. It's going to have to be like, let's say you take a cholent, which is a seventh cooked, or like an eighth cooked, or something like that, right? And you're doing it for tonight. Like, what's the case? Right? What's the case that you can answer that atmana with the Eved? What? Versteht sich. If you have the case also, if by us it's going to be almost always impossible to answer, right? Because when you're on top of a hot plate, so then it's not going to be considered as atmana b'davar moisef hevel anyways. Right? So we get there. I don't know if you can ever have any case in the world, unless you, what are you? You're like the strange guy who takes a cholent, puts it in salt, okay, when it's an eighth cooked, and you're eating it tonight. Okay, so that's the case here. Listen, heed my words, right? In that case, you're going to ask her atmana is v'davar moisef hevel, and that's a big avera. It's not a big avera, but we're going to even ask her b'diavad. You're not going to be able to eat your salty cholent. Okay, so that's a negeya, but it's very negeya later on because we're going to be mitzaref a lot of these shitas. A lot of these shitas we're going to be mitzaref, right? In other words, tachlis, whenever you're dealing with a cholent, generally you're dealing with something that's usually at least Michael ben Yisayim, whatever, and you're dealing with something which is for tomorrow anyways. There's a lot here what to be saying. Okay, so now let's start. Okay, now everybody's with me. We can start. Derech Agav, there's another machlekes I forgot to mention. I told you yesterday we're finishing atmana yesterday, and before I get into all the shahs, I forgot to mention there's a tremendous machlekes. When you hear it at first glance, it sounds very strange, right? Do you know there's a major machlekes in the Rishonim? Is atmana mitzad echad called atmana? This is the biggest machlekes in all of atmana. Is atmana mitzad echad called atmana? Now, when you hear it, it sounds like a weird thing. What doesn't the word atmana mean to wrap and whatever? Okay, so there's a major machlekes. The shita of the Svardim sounds like that atmana mitzad echad is shnei atmana. And you know who paskins like that? None other than the greatest Jew that ever lived in Bnei Brak, Chazon Ish. The greatest Jew that ever lived in Bnei Brak, assuming Bnei Brak geographically is not the Bnei Brak which I have rise. It's not Bnei Brak in the time that Rabbi Kiva was there. God, when Rabbi Kiva was there, he was only there because he came from collecting money, whatever. But Al Kapanim, the greatest Jew that ever lived in Bnei Brak, he held Hatmana mitzad echad ishmei Hatmana. It's what does it mean? What does it even mean? Hatmana mitzad echad shmei Hatmana. Okay, so again, you guys know too much about Hatmana. You think Hatmana means wrapping. This is a world war. Maybe if I take something and I put it straight on the coals, so that shows that this guy is very nervous about cooking. Maybe the only time that maybe whenever it's touching the heat source mamish, so that's called Hatmana. That already shows us this incredible insanity and sehitzkeit about his food and this nervousness about food. All right. So then maybe that's the only way. Maybe that's already a problem. Mashen Kane, the Ashkenazim hold not like that. We hold that Hatmana has to be, and we'll see the Lashon Ramah has to be mutman all over the place. It's got to be totally mutman. Hatmana bekulai. Hatmana bekulai. It's got to be. Oh, so how in the world? Rabbi Vajra is telling us that the Svardim, they're allowed to take food straight out of the fridge and put it onto a hot plate on Shabbos. By side, I have a kash on the Svardim. How are they allowed to have food on a hot plate on Erev Shabbos? This food is straight onto the hot plate. You're straight on your heat source. Bishalma, if you have you put it on a blech or something, maybe because then it's removed from the not even. Meaning the only time it'll be mutter is if, according to this, is if it's on like a tripod. That's the case of the Gemara. If it's on a tripod. But once you're on an actual boiling hot heat source, right? So how did this Svardim allow this? Right? You have to think about this. You have to think about this. No, you have to help your Sephardi neighbors. No, what do you guys say over there? No? Who am I Sephardim? My Sephardim have given up over here. No, we have no Sephardim left? No, Rabbi Laghai, what's Lamaisa? What do you guys do? Yidl. Yidl sounds like a Sephardi name. No? What's Yidl? What? No, Rabbi, give these back. No, I forgot I could torture. No, what do you do? What do? You put something straight on a hot plate. What is this? It's not on the fire source. No, yes, it is on the fire source. Of course, it's on the hot fire source. What do you mean? What? So it sounds like maybe the Sfardim also agree that even if you say Atmana mitzad echad, but it has to be, Atmana means it has to be like something wrapped. It has to like come up a little bit, like coals that come up a little bit. Maybe that's the pshat. No, maybe, what? Beis Meir says something like that, right? Maybe. Okay, you have to think about this. We'll have to come back to this. Now, I have to come back. Well, Pashut. What happened here? We didn't do anything today. What's going on? What did we do? All right, we didn't do anything here. All right, let me at least start the Shaila. That's the least we ever did in this year. Everybody say, this Shabbos, this is what we're supposed to start here. Now we start the Shiur. Okay? This is what we're supposed to start with. Are you allowed to take kishka and submerge it in your cholent? Are you allowed to take a kishka and submerge it in cholent? So I heard a voice scream out from the back, yes. Should I tell you why he screamed out yes? Because in the Haim, what they used to do is, they used to take them gurgle. Yeah, sometimes the gurgle. You remember this, or you still do it? All right, I'll tell you. Nussi, what Nussi does is, it takes the gurgle. Okay, everyone knows what a gurgle is. A gurgle is the neck. It's the neck, right? And they took the neck. I don't know if it had the gurgle guide in the Arayin, but it had the skin of the gurgle, right? And they took it. It has a name for it. What's it called? What? Not the gargle. No, that has a name. Was it? Heitzel? No, but that's what they would take? Yeah. I thought they just took the actual kishka. They took it and wrapped it in the kishka. You don't eat the kishka? What'd you say? Oh. Yes, you do. What do you mean? No, the hartzel? What do you take it in the, how do you? They took one of the innards of this murdered goose or duck or chveisnish, and then they would take it and they would fill it with kishka, and they would fill it with kugel, and then whatever. I'm making things up now, but they would fill it with all types of zachin, right? And then they would take her and they would stup her into the cholent. They'd jump her into the cholent. So the night beside, whatever you're going to tell me, I know it's mutter to take my kishka and to wrap it in silver foil and to put it inside a sakant is more chamer than isura. Don't wrap your kishka in silver foil because it's kosher for Alzheimer's. They say that the silver foil together with the fire, that's what they say, it causes Alzheimer's. Right? So don't do that. I guess what you do is take like a mask or something, right, and wrap it inside, wrap it in the mask or something like that. But Nussi says, whatever you're going to tell me, I know it's mutter because as I am zegitin in the Haim. In the Haim, they wrapped it with the kishka and they took the sarayin in the cholent and that's what they ate, right? So therefore it's mutter. So come to gain, and this I'll have to end the Shiur with this. Come to gain the Shevet HaLevi. I didn't write down where, I'm sorry. Shevet HaLevi says, don't bring a raya from the Haim. And I was there, he said, in Wien. I was there. Don't bring a raya, says the Shevet HaLevi from the Haim. You know why? Because in the Haim, this is why it got me nervous, Rabbi March. He says in the Haim, they would eat everything. So there was no games. So they had potatoes there and they had meat. Well, I don't know how much meat they had. They had potatoes, they had barley, whatever, right? And then they had this wrapped up gurgle and this whole matzah, and then they ate it. And they ate it straight. So I said, that's not a shaila of, when everything, you don't say that if you have one piece of meat inside the cholent, so then, that meat is a shaila of atmana. Because, it's wrapped with the cholent. What do you mean? It's all one big food. It's all one big food. It's not atmana. There's no one, it's all one big food. So here also, there's no raya, he says. It's all one big food. So you're not going to say that gurgle is wrapped up with cholent. It's all part of the cholent. But here's different, says the Shevet HaLevi when he answers. Shevet HaLevi says here's different. Because over here, he says, you're wrapped up with cholent. So besides after Shevet HaLevi, if you're wrapped up with cholent, then typically that the cholent is the remetz. The cholent is the remetz. The cholent itself is the remetz. You hear this, Maisa? Maybe the cholent should be the remetz. But I didn't write down where. I don't know why. I didn't write down where. So Elamite, maybe you'll write like this. I saw one sefer, he says, No. He says, no, I shouldn't do this, no. I'll end with one nakuda. Maybe you'll say that silver foil is not a kli, or whatever paper is not a kli. It's not a kli. So what's the difference? It's not a kli. So maybe it doesn't spalt. It's all one food, right? And say it a little bit more. Maybe the silver foil is not a kli. Maybe you need a kli. What? Maybe you need a kli. It's not a kli. It doesn't have a din of a kli. In Tum of Tyre, it's not a kli. Well, so what do you mean? Rabbi Falk taught us, right? What did Rabbi Falk teach us? He taught us that every food is entitled to unwrapping, right? So the truth is like this. This is what I want to bring out, but it doesn't matter. It's the chaos. That's why I'll end with this. But the Graz and the Kuntres Achra and Ration and Tess, he says it's not true. The Gemara talks about an egg, and the Gemara says if you take an egg and you do atmana into the boiling hot sand. The Gemara is the whole Gemara, the difficult Gemara, bro, on Shabbos Daf Lamed Tes. The Gemara says that's atmana. He says, l'chayra, what's an egg? An egg is one big shem oichel. So you see that if you have something that blocks an egg in halacha, for example, there's no question an egg is a shem of an oichel. It's not a kli. An egg is not a kli, right? In Hilchos Tum Matayra, a kleep of an egg is not a kli, right? So you see that if you take a food, an egg is called a food, and you wrap it, so then you could wrap a food, and that could be called a tamana, right? So over here, whatever you're going to say, it's no different than an egg. No, it doesn't make a difference. Who cares? It's not a kli. It's not a kli. I don't know. Is that a tain on rafal? The egg is a tain on rafal, right? Because you see that a food, when you have a food taka doesn't get a, why doesn't an egg get a first wrapping? What? Because the shells are wrapping, but maybe you get. Sure. Well, we'll stop here, but this is what you have to think about. You have a few things to think about. Number one is how does Sfardim put things on hot plates on Erev Shabbos, obviously, I'm talking. How do the Sfardim put things on Erev Shabbos on a hot plate? Two is when you're eating your kishka, how did you eat your kishka? You're over on Atmana. But the Evid, we're not going to answer, right? Because, it's already probably cooked, and Michael soy, and it's for tomorrow, and all these stories that we have anyways, But okay, but Akapanim, you want to know lechatchila to give? So how you allowed to have kishka? What are the svaras? What are the svaras? What? The sweater on there? No, that's very sure. So let me just say one thing on the parsha. Danny, do I have 7 minutes? I don't want to go overtime. I never go overtime. Danny? Where's Danny? Good. Okay. Is there a chumash? I just need Haftarah for a second. I haven't welcomed these guys in a while. I welcome all the Torah Time listeners. Yerushalayim Kodesh, Parshas, Dvarim. What's the Haftarah? Chazayin. So it says like this. It says in the Haftarah, Yoda Shor Kineu, V'chamor Evus Bailov. I always get nervous. When you start with the Haftarah, for sure people just like turn off the TV right away, right? The person starts with Haftarah is Ay Navi, right? But some Shabbos Chazayin, he probably feels guilty doing that, no? To turn off the TV when the Shabbos Chazayin. Yoda Shor Kaineu. The shor, he knows, the ox, he knows the person that bought him. He knows his master. Shor knows his master. The chamor Evus Bailov. So the shor is a higher madrega. A shor knows his master. The shor, he knows who his master is, and he has a little bit more loyalty and faith, and he has a little bit of decency to the one that bought him, to the owner. The chamor, he's a much lower creature and a much lower intellect. So the chamor, he doesn't even makir the person that owns him. He's not somebody that's makir is bailim, but he's makir is avus. What's an avus in English? I say is truff. What's it called? Truff, right? And he's got this like a hole, this little mask matzav over here. Right? He's got this, and inside his food, and he thinks, where does the food come from? The food comes from there. It's just not Lumdas, right? He thinks that the food comes from there. Right? And then it says, yeah, but Klal Yisrael la yada ami. But Klal Yisrael, they don't know me. They don't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're not even an ox. You're not even the shor that knows the person that owns him. Okay? The one that he knows his owner. And you're not even a chamor. that you at least know the food comes from the, it comes from here. So at least he's thankful to his Ava, to his trough, right? His Trough. He's at least thankful to his trough. But Klal Yisrael, they don't even know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, there's a lot you can ask on this sentence. So the whole Tzushtel, what does it mean? Like, does Klal Yisrael not? We don't even realize that that the food comes from my fridge. Well, we don't have thanks to the fridge. Like the hard Tzushtel. But I think the most boilet question over here is, what's the comparison? The Helika Bashefer, he made a shiur with that type of instinct and that type of nature. The nature of a shiur is that he has a loyalty. So he understands that the person that owns him, he has to be good to him, because if you're not going to be good to him, you're not going to eat. And the chamor, he's good to his trough. He won't rip his trough. He won't break his trough, because he knows that if he's bad to it, he's not. That's where the food comes from, right? So that's his instinct. That's his teva. But what's the kasha? So, but Klal Yisrael, but they're not makir and mispoinin in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So sometimes you have a kasha, and the kasha is mechayev the obvious answer. It's vice the chayes that the instinct of a yid, the teva and the nature of a yid, is to be mispoinin. To be mispoinin, that's the nature. Your nature is just like an ox is loyal to his master, and just like the chamor has a certain hakara, the kol hapachas, to the food where it comes out of, is a certain hakara. So the nature of a Jew is to be mispoinin and to come toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it says. I'm saying, even no matter what you say, that's what it says over here. The nature of a yid is to be mispoinin with a little bit of hispoinin. Meaning, it's true that it requires a bit of hispoininess, but the nature of a Jew is to have that. You see, Jews are very, very, introspective type of people. They have a lot of hispoininess in general. Jews are very, intelligent people. The Rebbeinu Shalom made Jews very intelligent and with a lot of thought. And with a little bit of it's the instinct, the kitzur of a Jew, to be misbainin and come straight back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what it says here. You can be ma'arich more and more, but that's what it says here. That's your nature. That's your nature, right? The Rebbeinu Shalom made you like that. That's in your blood. Your blood is to be misbainin. Rav Shach Zichron Livracha used to tell people, I've mentioned this many times, Rav Shach Zichron Livracha used to tell people when they would ask him certain questions, right? I think he said, at the Yarchei Kala, to open the opening address once by the Panovich Yarchei Kala, he once said over that the Gemara asks the Kasha, Ama of the Arts, the Gemara Nadarim, and nobody knew. The Nevi'im on Nishkevus, the Chachamim didn't know. No one knew. No. So what happened? Finally, it came out the Baskal because of the Bircha B'Torah Tchila, and that's how they found out this. Rabbi say, if the Nevi'im at Nishkevust and the Chachamim at Nishkevust and the ganze Tzadikim and all the Gedolei Ador didn't know, so what do you want from Klal Yisrael? Obviously, the level of the Aveir was Dakish Shebedakis, and Taka the Chazal go on to say they were like Birchu B'Torah Tchila. That means that, and the Ran says it means because they learned Torah, but they didn't have a chshivas of Torah, didn't have the value of Torah, whatever. But obviously, it was the Dak Shebedak, because if Taka the greatest Nevi'im and the greatest Chachamim, they didn't know. So then, what do you want from the people? So Shach used to say, no, because they knew. You yourself know. You yourself, it could be the Chachamim, the Nevi'im, Taka won't know because it's not about them. Right? But the person himself, with a little bit of his baininess, Taka, that's the Metzias of Klal Yisrael, is that when they're misbainin, they'll come to the emes and they'll know what's right. They'll come to the emes and they'll know that Taka, everything comes from Shemayim. And that's basically this idea, that it's an instinct. It's an instinct of a yid to be able to be misbainin and come to the emes about what he has to be misakin in life, and come to the emes about what he has to be doing in his avodas Hashem. People all the time, they call me up as if I know the answer. He had a certain issue and this and that, and he wants to know what to work on. And they say, what do I know? I know your affairs, right? Let me tell you something about that. The Arizal says that whatever is your hardest thing, that's what you came back to be misakin. Some people it's bittul Torah, some people it's shmir sinayim, some people can't concentrate in davening. Whatever it is that's your hardest thing, that's what you're doing here. That's what you came back to be misakin. So I'm going to answer for you. I know what your issue is. I know with a little bit of hispainus, you know what you have to do. But I'm milay hispainin. They're not doing their instinct. That's the difference. So that's what Chazal is teaching us over here. And of the Arts, that's what the whole Navi is. That's what Shabbos Chazon is all about. That's what the ganze Drei Wochen is about. I have to be misbainin. Let's go to be misbainin for a second. You have to take things and look on a different level, a little bit of a deeper level. When you look at things on a surface level, you see it. Well, I'll give you an example. You look at these 3 weeks. At these 3 weeks, beside are they weeks of course, they're weeks of tragedy and they're weeks of availus. There's no question, right? But look on a deeper level. You know, Bemis, you look in the Sifrei Kabbalah, they talk about how these weeks were supposed to really be the days of Rosh Hashanah till Shmini Atzeres. What's the raya? Everyone knows the Marshal and the Chair is very famous that these 3 weeks correspond to the 3 weeks of Rosh Hashanah all the way to Shmini Atzeres. It's 21 days there, 21 days there. Okay? Everyone knows that. But it's much, much deeper than that. Rabbi say, in the 3 weeks, when did the 3 weeks start? Right after Chet HaEgel. What was supposed to be if not for Chet HaEgel? It was supposed to be the start. It was supposed to be Rosh Hashanah. It was supposed to be a Yontif. It was supposed to be 3 weeks of Simcha. It was supposed to be a whole different look. And Taka Rosh Hashanah is like Yachol was the Shiva Servet Thomas. And really it's a whole Shaila. Does it culminate in Yom Kippur? And Yom Kippur corresponds to Tisha B'Av. Look at all the Svarim. They all talk about these things. Yom Kippur corresponds to Tisha B'Av, and Tisha B'Av has a lot of Taira and a lot of Av. I'm just saying there's a lot going on here that on a surface level, through the Tsar and through the Tzara, you're supposed to be Taka coming to a tremendous catcher of Ahava and to a tremendous catcher of closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that culminates in the same type of a Taira process Yom Kippur. The truth is, if you make a cheshbon today, I just made this cheshbon, I hope I'm right. I'm making a cheshbon as I'm talking. But if you make a cheshbon, so then today's Sukkot. Today in the 3 weeks, right? 15 days, right? Yeah, 15 days, right? If you make a cheshbon, Shiva Servet Thomas, right? So if you make a cheshbon, today is Taka, is Sukkot. Can you imagine today, you know, you're looking at today, it's like a day after Rosh Chodesh Av, and you look at, if you look with a deeper level, I'm supposed to be able to come through the Tsar, through my struggles. I'm supposed to come with a bit of a spineless to the same level of simcha that I have on Sukkot. Yeah, you have to. When a yid is misbainin, he's able to do things like that. We look at struggles and we think that struggles are just taking us and being marchik. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us struggles. He gives us sorrows. He gives us the 3 weeks and dry vach and where we're misbainin and all these things. And the tachlis is to realize how rachak we are from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he doesn't like us. Does that make sense? The tachlis of all the struggles that the Rebbeinu Shalom give us, right? You know, what did Arizal say? I think he said, a person that has no tsaras, he's either one of 3 things. He's either a shaita. No tsaras, I have no tsaras, so then you're a shaita, right? Because you do have tsaras. Or you're mamish, ich weiß, a malach, right? Or you're a Rosh Gomer. Because Baruch Hu is trying to give you your world in this world. Everybody has tsaras. So the Rebbeinu Shalom created a whole world with tsaras. You know that the Rebbeinu Shalom created worlds before this world? You know that? Do you know that there were worlds that Hashem created, and when He created those worlds, the worlds were kulay chesed. He just gave and gave and gave. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. He just gave and gave and gave. And then Rebbeinu Shalom realized, kivyachol, obviously it's a limit for us, but that's not a mahalech. It's too much chesed, and memel, it's not a kisuf. And He created this world that's struggle. But when you look at struggle, you think that struggle is difficult. Richut from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No. Struggle is a tachlis of creating a kesher to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have to be misbainin. You have to be misbainin. You have to see, I'm having a struggle, sometimes in ruchnias, sometimes in gashmias. And the purpose of that struggle, when you look at that struggle with a deeper, then that struggle is sukkos. It's trying to get me closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I'm misbainin. A yid has the ability to be misbainin. It's an instinct of a yid to be able to do this. It means that you're not in touch with your instincts. If you have an instinct that's broken and you don't have a sense of smell, you don't have a sense of taste, there's a problem here, corona, right? If a person is having an instinct that it's not working, so then you have to go to a doctor and deal with your instincts. If you have an instinct that's not getting you to the ability to be misbainin, to have a closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to have amunah and a behelik about shefer, and to somehow al yedei your matziv come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're not being misbainin, ami loy hisbainin. You're not being misbainin. And that's the avodah. That's the avodah in these 3 weeks, you know. So you have to be misbainin. You have to be misbainin. Struggles and sorrows. There's so much in these days. There's so much struggles and so much sorrows. So I said a mashal this morning. So for whoever's hearing it the first time, my apologies. It's a good thing to hear. It's a good thing to hear because, like I said, everybody's gonna have tsaras, and you have to look at tsaras, Rabbi Yisai, as a means of how is this gonna get me closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Such weak. It's so weak. The door is so weak. People go, they have to be locked in their room for 10 days and 14 days, and the whole world is terrible and everything is terrible. Well, calm down, right? Think about how is this going to make you closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How's the situation going to make you closer? That's why did Hashem give you a struggle? He's the Avinu Avarachim and He loves you. So why is He doing it? You have to be misbainin. Obviously, this is a means of getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How am I going to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You know, Rabbi Say, Life is like a spoonful of salt. Life is a spoonful of salt. Everybody is going to get a spoonful of salt. That's how it goes, Rabbi Isai. Unless you're a Rasha, unless you're a Malach, unless you're a Shaitan. Everybody's going to get always a spoonful of salt. Always. Always your spoonful of salt. If you take that spoonful of salt and you eat that spoonful of salt, so what happens? It's gefährlich. I can't eat a spoonful of salt. So what do? If you take that spoonful of salt and you put it in a cup of water, it's still very difficult to drink a spoonful of salt with a cup of water. It doesn't go down so smooth. You take that salt and you put it into a lake and you go and you let it, mix it around in there. And then you take a fresh cup of water out of that lake and you drink that cup of water. It's delicious. Delicious, right? So in life, it all depends. Are you a lake? Are you a lake or are you just a spoon? Right? Some people are a spoon, some people are a cup of water, and some people are a lake. So when the person is a lake, so then the Rebbeinu Shalom throws it in all the tzaras and he puts it in there. Adarabah. All that the Rebbeinu Shalom, he's able to see it. I have so much toivus from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to be mispoining. You have to be mispoining. And Taki, you have to be. Someone told me right to Gemaisa. You have to be mispoining about the toivus. What would happen if you ask your class? You tell them go and write down all of the salt that you have. All the tzaras that you have. What would happen? You write down all the salt that you have. People would write, I have this problem, I have this problem, I have this problem, because that's what we think about. You have this problem. But when a person's a lake, and they look at Bashefer, right? So what would happen? Now you tell them on the other side of the paper, go and write all of the toivus that the Halakha Bashefer does for you. Now, what would happen? Most people probably wouldn't have that much to write. Most people never do it. But if a person's a lake, you wouldn't have anything on the first side. Because all of those struggles are going to make him, if you're mispointing a little bit and you're a lake, so then all that becomes batal b'shishim and it all brings him closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Someone told me there's a wonderful Jew. He runs Ezim Mitzion. I forgot his name just now. What's his name? Well, yeah, Chalak, right? Chananya Chalak, correct? Like I said, right? And apparently he went to the Kaisel and there was a Jew at the Kaisel who was crying and crying and crying and crying. And he was there with a wealthy fellow, and they saw this guy crying. He said, listen, they made a deal, this wealthy fellow. So he runs a whole medical matzah there. So he said, look, if it's a medical issue, I'll take care of it. But if it's a financial issue, you'll take care of it. It's usually a financial issue. But if it's a financial issue, you'll take care of it. So they went over to him, they tapped him on the shoulder and said, this is your lucky day. What is it? You like it, huh? What is it? So he says, oh, so what's wrong? No, nothing's wrong. Everything's gewaldig. He said, why are you sitting here crying like that? He says, I have so much distractions in the Adank to the Abishar. He just made his last chasana, married off 12 children, small Yerushalmi family, right? He married off his last child, married off his 12th child, and now he's just being moided to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the toivus. He's being moided to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the toivus, right? Sometimes a person could have these struggles, and if he's misbeinin a little bit, he's going to be moided to Rebbeinu Shalom. All that crying could be a spineless, maybe all this murdik is spineless. And that's the ma'isa. That's the avodah. That's the avodah in these days. There's a lot of people in the world, Rabbi say, they're not getting their vacation this year. I'm not getting my vacation this year. I'm not getting my vacation. Right? I'm not getting my vacation. A lot of us. Right? What's my vacation? I go to England every year. My kids are taken care of. I give a shiur every night, and it's a change of scenery, and I look forward to it. And I do, even though it's my wife's parents. But I look forward to it, and it makes my wife happy, and everybody's happy. I'm not getting it this year. So one thing you could do is you could take that spoon of salt, and a lot of people, I'm giving you my mushals so that, everybody here has something this year. He's not getting his vacation this year, whatever your vacation is. And some people, my son is two-legged in the tefillin. He's putting on his tefillin for the first time in his room. He's in quarantine. Monday morning, maybe you guys will come. We'll dance outside the window or something, right? If we're all not in quarantine by then. So what do you have to do? You have to figure out a way in all these salt and these struggles. You could sit and wallow in the salt, right? And then you're a spoonful of salt. Or you could be a lake. And I told my son, we just decided we're making this the bar mitzvah, Joshua. We're going to try and figure out over here, right, about the minute that we have of putting on the tefillin 30 days before, how much is that minig mechayiv, and should we push it off? And maybe dafka we shouldn't push it off. And we sent already the child to all the G'dai Yisrael. We didn't get answers, but we sent the child to all the G'dai Yisrael. What to do. We're waiting for that one gadol to say, you know what, you're doing it on Monday and I'm coming. We're waiting for that. But upon him, you have to turn the salt. You put the salt into a lake. If you're a lake or place side, then not only won't you feel the salt, but the salt becomes a part of the whole matziv over there. But you have to be misbainin. You have to be misbainin. And a yid's instinct is to be misbainin. And in these 3 weeks, that tsar, I'm not saying don't make a mistake. You're supposed to have tsar. These are weeks of tsar. And but the tsar is supposed to come to the person to give him the agasha that this salt comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now I have to make sure that I'm a lake. If I'm a lake, so then already it's a different story. Then it'll bring me all these struggles closer to the Heilig Kabasha. Okay, good job.